Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, and thank you for joining. My name is TJ Christensen, the Executive Vice President of Sales and Marketing at Accesso. And during today's webinar titled Personalizing the Guest Journey with the Experience Engine, I'll be sharing some of the concepts inside the Experience Engine, or TE2, and how those concepts are redefining the guest experience for organizations around the globe. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items so you know what to expect and how to participate in today's session. You may have already noticed that your voices have been muted. They'll remain muted throughout the session. However, you will be able to type questions to our moderator throughout the webinar. So if something jumps out at you, please feel free to shoot it over to the moderator. Then at the end of the session, there'll be a Q&A taken from those typed questions. Okay? All right, well, let's get started. At Accesso, we believe technology has the power to redefine the guest experience. Everything we do starts with thinking about the guest experience first and what that means for, what that means for our clients and their guests. Our goal is to deliver those technologies in a way that it helps you develop deep, rich experience for your guests so they come back time and time again. Before we get to the core content of the webinar, I think it's important to take this opportunity to talk a little bit about Accesso Solutions and how we see TE2's technology helping further our mission and vision as an organization. Today, we offer 6 solutions, and think about those solutions in 4 different product sets. The first is Accesso Low Queue off to your left. Accesso Low Queue provides virtual queuing solutions to attractions around the world. And if you're not familiar with the concept of virtual queuing, it allows guests the ability to digitally reserve their place in line. And then once it's their turn to ride, they get a notification, they can return back to that ride, hop on, and enjoy it, having avoided standing in the whole 90-minute line or 60-minute line. The benefit here to the guest is that they haven't had to spend the 60 or 90 minutes of their day standing in that physical line. Then they've been able to relax, hang out with their friends, enjoy the parks or venues, food and beverage and retail outlets, take in a show, etc. On the operator side, they're able to drive revenue by charging for the virtual queuing product, but also reap the benefit of not having the guest's wallet locked in that line for 90 minutes. We offer virtual queuing in a couple different flavors. QBot is the original virtual queuing solution. You may have seen this in parks like Six Flags or Legoland. QSmart is our smartphone solution. QBand is purpose-built for water parks. And then Prism is our brand new wearable that is multi-purpose for wet and dry parks. So our second category is ticketing. We have 3 different products in the ticketing space. So I'll walk you through the differentiators of those 3 so you can kind of help understand where each one fits within our organization. So, excuse me. Accesso Passport is our fully hosted end-to-end ticketing solution for general admission venues. Accesso Passport's most well known for its e-commerce platform, which helps venues increase cart size and conversion by upselling, cross-selling, and simply selling more for our clients wherever their guests want to buy, on-site, online, or on the go. Accesso Showware is a fully hosted box office and online ticketing solution specifically designed for the live entertainment space. So whether you're a performing arts center, a sporting arena, or a casino with a live entertainment component, or any other type of venue with limited seat capacity offerings, Accesso Showware offers a complete range of solutions that empower you to take full control of your ticket sales. Our third and final ticketing product is called Accesso Seriesware. It's a robust point-of-sale solution with deep roots in ski, cultural, and the attractions market. It delivers feature-rich functionality across your venue, from ticketing to retail to food and beverage and more. So for those general admission venues that are looking for a one-stop shop from a point-of-sale perspective, Accesso Seriesware is a great fit. So our third category is distribution. Earlier this year, excuse me, we acquired a company called Ingresso. Ingresso is essentially a global distribution system for venues and a first of its kind. They allow venues to harness the power of third-party distributors And they help venues by providing them a single connection that gives them access to a wide array of third-party distributors and online travel agencies that venues can then manage through a single platform. So rather than doing a dozen different integrations to a dozen different distributors, you can connect once to an accesso and get the benefit of their distribution network. So that brings us to the Experience Engine, or TE2. So we think of TE2 as an experience marketing platform. With TE2 now part of accesso, we see that technology as a way to elegantly bring to life a wealth of guest data that resides across all our solutions, from wait times to ticket and point of sale data to engaging guests in real and meaningful ways throughout their time on site. The way that we bring all of that data together is by weaving it throughout the solutions or into the solutions to engage guests where they are at your venue, bringing the digital and the physical property together. What we're going to talk about over the next 20 minutes or so are the ways in which we accomplish that. First, let's start with at the fundamental level, which is bridging the gap between the virtual and physical worlds and what we mean by that. So let's start off by defining what we consider to be the 3 basic steps of the digital guest journey. We'll build on these steps as we move forward, so it's important we quickly define these in a little bit of detail. First is the before. This is planning and the booking part of the journey. Basically everything your guests are doing right before they show up in your parking lot, right? The during is the good stuff. This is when they're on site at a show, skiing or boarding all day on your slopes, riding your attractions with their family and friends. This is all the cool stuff that they're doing when they're on site. It also, outside of an entry ticket, it's your prime opportunity for driving revenue and making sure they feel they received value for their hard-earned dollar. The third part is the after. Once they leave, then we sort of, depending on how much information we have, you're communicating with them after, enticing them with offers or reasons to come back and visit. If we take that digital journey and look at it through a marketer's lens, what we find is a huge gap in how, when, and where we communicate it with our guests. Before we visit, we might be enticing the guest to act on a marketing message or offer that we're hoping will drive behavior. But the real challenge comes once a guest is on site at the venue or in the physical space. When the guests are on site, most venues rely on passive marketing. You've got signage, you've got park guides, maps, etc. The challenge is guests are actively looking for ways to make their experience better. They're wondering what they should be doing, where they should be going, how to make the most of their day. It's a true blind spot for most operators. Then they leave, and as marketers, we're looking for clues about their visit, to make our messaging there afterwards more relevant, more meaningful, but that can prove really challenging or difficult. So we're left with sort of a one-size-fits-all marketing and messaging campaign, maybe slightly nuanced and segmented, but for all intents and purposes, one-size-fits-all. So if we unpack that digital journey a little bit more, we can better illustrate what that blind spot is comprised of and uncover a new level of interaction and engagement with our guests. So again, our before activities are well-defined: planning, booking, entry, right? But we're missing a wide array of guest interaction points when they're on site. And remember, this is our prime opportunity for engagement and to drive revenue. Then once the guest leaves, we probably pick back up where we left off from a marketing perspective, offer them an incentive to come back, fill out a survey, etc. And that goes on and on. In the future, we'll be able to provide, or we'll be able to pull in touch points into that marketing decision engine and provide contextual recommendations to guests based on their unique experience. This will allow us to curate relevant offers and experiences in real time. So think about that for a second. If you're able to understand and react to guests in real time based on what they've done, what they're doing, you're now able to help them have 1, 2, maybe even 3 or more additional experiences they would have otherwise missed. So how do you think that will impact your guests' likelihood to recommend or return, or their perception, again, of the value that they got for their dollar? Every additional experience adds to that value proposition. So now we'll take a look at some examples of what that might look like in the real world, right? So here we have some guests receiving advice on what to do next based on where they are and what they just did, which is arrive in this case. They bought 2 adult tickets. They just walked into the park. They've clearly grabbed some food really quick. So what sort of notification would you like to send them? How would you like to communicate with them? Well, hey, what to do next? Insider tip, Blitzer, which could be a premium ride, has a 10-minute wait. Head there now. It gives you contextual information about where you should go to make the most out of your day. Another example could be this family. They're first-time visitors. They're nearing the front entrance, and they've just spent 6 hours in the park already. You could deduce that these folks are probably ready to leave, right? So you could send them a relevant offer versus information and says, upgrade your daily tickets to a season pass today and save. So you're catching them right before they leave. A third example in a water park environment could be, to season pass holders. And this is a bit of a blend of both offer and guest experience. It's mid-afternoon. There's some excess cabana inventory because some folks have left early. How can you leverage that excess cabana inventory to help make someone else's visit even better? So here's a notification you could send to these folks. Relax and enjoy the rest of your day in one of our premium cabanas. So, that all sounds great, but let's talk a little bit about why more venues aren't doing this and why we're not able to easily put all this information together, right? Well, the reason for that is because most venues have disparate systems doing all sorts of different things. And within those systems, there are a lot of unutilized data points. So let's take a look at what we might find at a typical guest in a typical theme park. And this example applies to whether you're a ski resort, performing arts center, or a museum, or aquarium. So, a guest buys a ticket, which allows an operator to capture some basic information like the type of tickets, the payment type, and potentially when they entered. From there, they're going to start their day, right? And they may have upgraded to buy queuing, which may or may not be connected with the ticketing system. They may have visited food and beverage and retail outlets, which again, may or may not be the same system of record and may or may not be connected with the ticketing system. And then they're staying at the venue for a specific amount of time. They're at a specific location that may or may not be relevant to some sort of additional experience. And there's information about what they've done so far as to what they should do next, right? So with TE2, we have the experience and the expertise to pull all these data points together to make sense of them and allow venues to start getting a true sense of their visitors' identity and preferences, which allow venues to be more responsive and operators make better decisions. So if you think back to our product solution slide, and if your venue is running one or more of our solutions, you can very easily imagine how much easier it would be to pull all this information together and how powerful the combination could be for your venue. Now, you don't have to, but you can start to get a sense for how, in the beginning, when we were talking about weaving TE2 through all the accesso solutions, how that could help create a really unified platform. Here is that sort of illustrated, I think, fairly elegantly. We've talked about identity. We've talked some about identity, but what I'd like to do is provide a little more context around that, what that might look like on a guest-by-guest basis. So here we have some folks standing in line. We have Tim Smith, who's an annual pass holder for 3 years. He visits 3 times a year, family of 4, 2 kids above the age of 13. Now, across these 4 these 4 guest types, this information could probably reside in your ticketing system today, or between your ticketing system and your CRM system resides in there today. We have an anonymous guest. They bought a daily ticket at the front gate using Amex. We have Mary, who 2 adult, 2 kids, purchased queuing ahead of time. And Theo, first-time pass holder, 18 to 25 demographic. Now, if we're able to tie all these unified or unutilized data points together, what does that start to look like for Tim, Mary, Theo, and the anonymous guest? Well, now we're able to see that Tim actually only visits during special event the special event concert series. He always buys VIP food and beverage package. He never rides coasters. So he's leveraging his season pass for your concert series. How is that going to enable you? How does that shift your thinking about how you would market to that guest? The anonymous guest we've now identified as Will Parker. He purchased premium queuing. He's 6 hours in the parks and rode the thrill ride 4 times, each thrill ride 4 times. So how are you going to market to that thrill seeker? Mary spent an hour and a half researching kids activities on the website, kids merchandise, kids meals, and rides under 48 inches in height. You know, how is that going to affect the imagery and the content that you're delivering to Mary about coming back and leveraging a season pass moving forward? You certainly don't want to show her the big scary roller coasters, right? At least not yet. And Theo visited 10 times. Each visit to a quick service included 2 drinks. So either Theo's really thirsty or he's coming to the park with friends. So how does that enable you? How are you going to communicate to Theo differently? So, you know, if you take it outside of the theme park space, because I know we have a sort of an array of folks on the line, you know, in the museum world, stadium world, or ski, you know, museums, we have Jamie, who's a family member for the last 3 years. He donates $750 a year, and he's got a family of 4 with kids above age 13. Mark's a season ticket holder. He's got a family of 4 above 13. And Roland bought 2 adult and 2 child lift passes and purchased rentals and lessons for 1 adult and 2 kids. So somebody's got their own skis there. So again, that's probably in your systems today. But when you tie all the other systems together, you start to get a better view on these individual folks. So Jamie visits 10 times a year, spends the majority of his time in the Impressionist collection, enrolls his kids in programs every year, attends special events. So when you're thinking about developing that member into more of a donor, you can leverage all those things a little bit better. Mark arrives each time in time for warm up. Before the 3rd quarter, he hops up, before it ends, he hops up and gets 2 hot dogs and a beer. So how can you better anticipate his needs as an operator? Roland, we figure out that they ate every meal at the resort, and 1 adult is sort of an average skier, and 1 adult is an expert skier on double black diamonds. How are you going to communicate to that family dynamics? So again, you can sort of see how this starts to build a wealth of information. So we've talked about the digital guest journey and the marketing blind spot. We've talked about the power of connecting previously unutilized data points and what that means from a marketing and guest experience perspective. So now what I want to talk about is how the solution actually works and enables operators to engage their guests in ways that we've described so far. So going back to our original concept, we have a variety of guest touch points, but how we leverage those moving forward is important. And what our solution does beautifully is refine the guest identity based on how they continue to interact and engage with our venue. We enhance the guest identity with every single visit, creating, in essence, a digital fingerprint that gets better and better over time. The solution can then look for profiles with similar fingerprints and begin engaging guests in relevant and meaningful ways. That feeds the recommendation engine that allows us to deliver targeted and highly relevant offers and experiences to guests based on what they've done and what guests like them have done, truly personalizing their interactions with the venue at a whole new level, from best ways to navigate the venue for a first-time visitor or repeat visitor, to serving up relevant content where and when they need it, to providing operational information to anticipate guest needs. This feeds the entire engine. So you may be thinking, that all sounds great. But I'd really like to know is, how do I go from my current state to leveraging a platform like TE2? What does that look like? What does that entail? What's the process? Well, excuse me, from a less technical and process perspective, we start with the introduction. For those interested, we would do a kickoff meeting with the senior leadership team, and that would include the executive leaders of marketing, operation, lines of business like food and beverage, ticketing, retail, IT, and finance. And we would sit down and we would understand what your high-level challenges are and what are your short, medium, and long-term goals. From there, We would facilitate a discovery workshop, which is a deep dive into the pain points and operational challenges, as well as start mapping out sort of what the IT and marketing infrastructure looks like. What points of sale are you using? What CRM are you using? What property management system? So on and so forth. Then once completed, we'd provide your organization with our recommendation on plans moving forward. Another thing that we do in the discovery workshop is we whiteboard the guest journey. What's the ideal guest journey from all your different entry points, whether it's third party, front gate, e-commerce, so on and so forth. What does that all look like? We map all that together for you. From there, we agree to a prototype and we test it. And assuming the prototype proves out, we then review, iterate, and do a full-scale deployment. So those are sort of the 4 steps in the process. At a more granular level, after the introduction, we would focus around connecting all your enterprise systems into our connector framework, which maps and ingests those data points in real time. So the way that that's illustrated here is you have sort of enterprise systems, like I mentioned a minute ago, your point of sale, CRM, loyalty, reservations, ticketing entitlements, all that's going to tie in from a system perspective. But you also need to think about proximity. So GPS, Wi-Fi, beaconing, being able to identify where and when folks are in the physical space of your venue. So that all ties together in real time in the connector framework. And then from there, that allows us to take all these disparate systems and piece together customer information to build a unified identity in real time. So again, it's about, if you think back to the slides earlier, it's all those components that went vertically across the stream or horizontally across the stream and bringing those around the Johnsons or the particular guest and developing their identity. Then at that point, we're able to serve up profiles in our experience studio and deliver personalized experiences in an engaging way. Those could be messaging to staff to help them anticipate guest needs. That could be providing customer service, leveraging chatbots, interacting and delivering messages via mobile or wearables, providing custom experiences via kiosk. It's really about how you want to bring this to life in your venue and what's going to make the most sense to you. This holistic approach allows us to deliver a solution that's been tailored to meet your venue's unique needs on a one-to-one basis. So it's all about the guest experience. It's all about personalized communication and guest service, helping guests get the most out of their visit, which reinforces the venue's value proposition. It's about designing that immersive experience for your customers. It's about making sure that you're anticipating their needs, that you're giving them relevant offers or you're giving them relevant experiences when they walk in. It's their first time, which rides to go to. Here's, I've got kids. What's the best thing to do for kids first? What about teenagers? Where should I go first? It's about providing guests contextual information and recommendations when and where they need them. It's also about using the data to drive upgrades, offers, and messaging to help increase per caps. And it's also about impacting operations across your lines of business. That's not to be underestimated. This solution can help you alleviate strain on resources, spread guests out across the venue to minimize crowding, or move perishable inventory. It's all pulled together in a dynamic engine that has you at the control in control. So thank you all for your time today. That concludes the content portion of today's webinar. I hope you found it worthwhile. If you're interested in learning more about TE2, please email us at sales@accesso.com for more information. And at this time, I'd like to open it up to Q&A. So Katie, do we have any questions from the audience?
Thank you, TJ. We do have a couple of questions. I'd like to first remind all of our attendees that if you hadn't had a chance to submit your question, you can do so using the questions portion of the GoToWebinar panel. Our first question involves the discovery process, which TJ, I know you talked a little bit about already, but could you just give us some more information about this? What does it look like? Who needs to be involved? How long does it take? Those kinds of things.
Sure. So I should also say that we have two folks from the Experience Engine team on the line as well. I'll introduce them really quickly. We have Matt Oberdorfer, who is the VP of Product for the Experience Engine, and Josh Bass, who is the Head of Technology. And I'm actually gonna ask Matt to weigh in on this particular question, since he's intimately familiar with the discovery process and what that looks like on a one-to-one basis. So Matt?
Yeah, hello everybody. This is Matt Oberdorfer, VP of Product at the Experience Engine. Yeah, so typically in the discovery process, it is really about bringing together the line of business managers of the resort or theme park or venue, and really talking about what are the current operational challenges. Let it be in the, let's say, attached hotel or admissions, or wherever there are actual problems that can be solved. At the same time, we also start in this discovery process to map out the typical day of a guest and how this guest actually is kind of moving through the venue, interacting with the rides or the whatever attractions the venue has to offer, and then really trying to prioritize what are the actual pain points for the guest during this entire journey, during the entire day. If the guest stays actually in a room, in a hotel, on site, then obviously that has, is reaching out or includes also, check-in. How can that be made better? If you stay, let's say, at a theme park or at a ski resort, you might want to know when your room is ready while you're skiing, things like that. So we are mapping out the entire journey, and then at the end of the discovery workshop, we really go and look how can we actually interact with the guest to make these top 5, top 10 pain points easier. What are the system of records that we will need to integrate with? Let it be a hotel door that wants to be opened, or that the guest can open just using their phone, check into the hotel, buy upgrades to existing tickets, order food with an app on the phone, things like that. So that will conclude the end of that discovery process. Josh, do you want to add something to that?
Thank you, Matt. Yeah, I think, Matt, you covered the big goals, which is we want to understand what the business goals are, what the guest needs are, and what the operational constraints are. And one thing that I've heard, I just definitely want to reinforce, is prioritization is key. As you start to look across each of these units, not surprisingly, you'll uncover a lot of things that you could or maybe want to do. And the key during discovery is to understand which items are going to allow you to create the greatest benefit here with the minimum operational impact, and start with those items, and also to understand some of your theses for items that you want to learn more about. Through discovery, we like to identify items that we have a very strong belief are going to immediately aid the guest and help business outcomes, but we also recognize this is an opportunity to try some items out and put in front of the guest to determine if these are worthy of additional effort. So I think with discovery, it's really important that we understand it. You don't want to try to do it all at once. Discovery helps us make sure we're focusing on the right items first.
And one more thing, we also are a very big believer in testing these hypotheses. It's not just sitting in a room coming up, with potential pain points, but really going into the venue, into the park, and understanding and talking to actual guests about these things, so that we can come up with hypotheses that then can be validated before they even get prioritized. So that's also part of the discovery process.
Great, thank you, Matt, and thank you, Josh. TJ, our next question is, does the implementation require software to be installed on a physical server, or is this something that's cloud-based?
Yeah, so I'll defer to Josh, Head of Technology for the Experience Engine, to talk a little bit about the technology behind the Experience Engine and whether it's on-premise or hosted. So Josh?
Thank you, TJ. So the Experience Engine solution is provided as a cloud-based platform as a service. Under almost all normal deployments, there is no need to deploy software on-prem. Now, given that we work in real-world environments and we do interact with point-of-sale systems and ticketing systems, inventory management systems, there are, in some cases, scenarios where we may want to work with and certainly are able to work with software and hardware that's in the field. But the cornerstone of the platform is a cloud-based solution.
Great, thank you, Josh. Our next question is, would this be an option for guests upon arrival? Or if we implement this program, would each guest receive real-time notifications? So in other words, would the guest pay to upgrade to this?
To upgrade to use the Experience Engine?
Oh, correct. I believe that's what they meant.
No, this is a service or an app or whatever the hardware is. It's displayed on either on a mobile phone or a kiosk or a bot that is free to the guest.
Right, and I think just to, oh, sorry, go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, in fact, the interesting thing and where the value comes in for the venue and the park operators and ski resort operators is the following: if the guest actually bought a ticket, let's say on online, and then registers their username and email address, which they also can stay anonymous. There's not really a forcing function there. But if they do, and they show their tickets that they bought in the app, then it all becomes this unified identity that even reaches beyond just being actually, in venue at the time. It can use that kind of CRM information to create user-specific experiences. And so the CRM value is actually brought in real time into the park, into the time they actually are spending in the park.
Great, thank you. Our next question involves licensing requirements. This person's just curious what the model is like.
Sure, Matt, do you want to take that one?
Yes. So in general, the licensing, there are different type of licensing models that we have. It depends on the venue. It depends on what we are providing in terms of experiences. So just to give you a couple of ideas how this might be structured. There is like with all platform as a service type of software solutions, there's a monthly fee involved that also can be structured, based on the number of guests that are in venue, or it can be structured based on the number of messages, or it can be structured in a different way that also has tiers where messages and guests actually don't matter. It has to do more with what the size of the entire solution is. So I know this is kind of vague, but we do have different pricing models for different venues.
Great, it sounds like there are lots of options, which is always a good thing. All right, our next question involves the user groups. Can you talk a little bit more about how you segment these?
Katie, this is Josh. I'm happy to take that field that question. So user segmentation comes in several formats. One way is information that's directly provided by the guest. That is to say, is through a registration or a survey process, I may answer questions that say that I've got kids, this is my hometown, these are the reasons that I'm here and visiting a venue. We can capture that while they're on site, immediately before or immediately after for someone who is going to be returning. We also have the ability to passively gather this data as we observe guest behavior. And as we were talking about the life cycle of things that people do in the digital experience before, through a ticketing and discovery process, what they do on site through navigation, consumption of services, and as they physically move around the property, and then as they leave, the data that we gather from them as their continued engagement with the brand, we can use this to passively move users into segments. Again, back to the example of my scenario with kids, if you observe me at a theme park, you'll see I'm spending a lot of time on the younger kid attractions because I have younger children. So even if I haven't volunteered that information, that starts to give you some information about my segment. As the platform, yes, TJ.
I was going to say, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was going to say that sort of prompted just a question for me about, in addition to the actual guest as a user, what about the operation? What about the operator? Are there specific ways that different roles within the organization can leverage the platform, whether you're a marketer or in the line of business or anything like that?
Absolutely, yes. And so the segmentation, this is the perfect segue, TJ. The segmentation that we use for guests, the same rules can be applied towards various roles within the organization. So as a guest, you know that you're going to communicate with me differently based upon whether I'm here with my family or if I'm here by myself, from a past member or from a one-time visitor to the property. Similarly, if you're a line of business operator, you have access to different capabilities within our control room, and you're going to receive different communications than if you are, say, at a corporate level marketing function. Platform is aware of each of these different roles and in fact uses a very similar mechanism to manage both. We have some properties, you really see this, say, aboard like a cruise ship, where people can smoothly move between being consumers of the services and employees who are providing those services. So they all go into our notion of a guest identity, and as we look at those identity characteristics, we can then move them into segments to control rights and privileges and content for messaging to that user.
Great, thank you, Josh. Our next question involves, it's a little technical, but it involves the process of capturing the guest details during an online transaction. And this person's wondering if you could expand on how that works. For example, Mr. Smith is purchasing 3 adult and 1 child ticket.
Yes, absolutely. I think first of all, before we address this, we need to just state that privacy is something that we take very seriously and that we are aware of and adhering with privacy guidelines worldwide with our customers. I think this is very important, especially in this day and age, as those rules are becoming more solidified and as guests are becoming more aware of them and more interested in knowing how their data is being used. So again, during discovery, it's very important that we lock down how aggressively we want to capture data and how we intend to use it. But with that said, it's this same active and passive data collection. So actively, as part of a purchase flow, you can ask a few questions that can provide a lot of demographic information for the guest. These can be optional. Think of this as a good way to start, take a cold start of a profile and start moving the conversation in the right way. As Matt has mentioned, you cannot put a large registration or a data collection wall between the guest and their purchase or the guest and their interaction. So it's very important that that data collection be optional. The other side is passive, and you hit the nail on the head there, Katie. If I'm buying an adult and 3 children's tickets, that gives me some demographic information right then and there. So without me providing any more information, that allows the platform to recognize that you are leaning towards a family segment and not as an individual consumer segment. And if we want to, we can get into quite a bit more detail. If there's a follow-up question, we can talk about cookies and device IDs, or we can have a follow-up conversation offline on that.
Okay, great, thank you. We do have a couple more questions that are coming in. The next one is, can you only capture data from accesso platforms, or can it integrate with other third-party software?
Okay, I'm going to grab this one, although I know Matt can feel this one as well because it's near and dear to his heart. It is very much the latter case. So we're an open data platform, and we are about gathering data and in many cases also sharing data with other systems of record. The goal is to get a complete view of the guest, and to do this, we need to cooperate with data across point of sale systems, business intelligence systems, and CRM systems that you might already have in place.
Can you give some examples?
Yes, absolutely. So one thing that we see from point of sale, for example, is that while we may be empowering a digital purchase flow, that a lot of properties still have a lot of foot traffic that's cash-based. Well, we don't have direct control over their guests. We are getting a lot of information about guest consumption behaviors over time of day and over different sub-venues within a property by taking a look at that foot traffic. So we get that data that tells us that, you know, at noon that these items are more popular at these places. That's very important because that's going to then help guide what items we promote and what offers we provide to that spot. Similarly, if we provide an offer, it could be for a digital food and beverage flow, or we could provide the equivalent of a print coupon or a digitally scanned coupon off your phone, which that point of sale system is then going to consume through its traditional tender types. Again, we want to look at those reports to take a look at effectiveness. Again, back to this idea of experimentation. We have a thesis that we can help improve the guest behavior, improve the guest experience through certain items and change guest behavior through certain items. We need that measurement to show the whole virtuous cycle.
Great, thank you, Josh. And we do have one last question. It's kind of a related question, so you may have already addressed it already, but this just involves the systems that you do integrate with.
Perfect, yeah, and I'll grab this one as well. So we've got connectors into many of the popular products and services in each of these areas. So I'll just talk to the very high level areas. Point of sale is a big one. Content management systems and digital asset management systems are another one. CRM systems and user identity and federated identity management systems are another big system that we tap into. Obviously, ticketing and product catalogs are big ones for us. Business intelligence and enterprise data warehouse systems. Matt, I'm probably missing a couple. Those are the ones that have been on my plate this last week.
Yes, and just to add to that, I mean, basically, you know, integration with the most common top vendors in these different categories are already in place, meaning this is what we do. This is, you know, some of the core value that we bring to the table to kind of wrangle the data in from those. If there are any systems that are outliers or very special to a park, we do have a data connect product, which basically allows relatively quickly to integrate even with, you know, let's say the most outer space type of system there is, as long as there is an API that we can, you know, integrate with.
And Katie, let me add just one last element on top of that, which is that we recognize that we're working with very successful businesses that have ongoing operations, and these systems of record are critical to their business. We of course need to ensure that when we do these integrations that we are doing no harm, that they are designed to be no impact on existing operations. And again, that as we add new capabilities, we want to build on top of current operational processes and current operational systems and not disrupt them and then replace them. So the connector framework is very much designed to get that data and allow the operations teams to continue to do what they've been doing, but also designed to not put additional load or stressors on those existing systems of record.
Perfect. Thank you, Josh, and thank you, Matt and TJ. And thank you, everyone, for attending today's webinar, Personalizing the Guest Journey with TE2. If we didn't have a chance to address your question, we will make sure to follow up with you individually. If you have any other questions or would like to learn more about the Experience Engine, please just shoot us an email over at sales@accesso.com. You will also receive a follow-up email within about 24 hours with a link to view a recording of today's webinar for your reference. On behalf of Accesso and TJ and the entire TE2 team, we'd like to thank you for joining us today and have a great rest of your day.